We all have anxiety, every last one of us, and we can master it. A lot of people won't take this template serious, and here's why. 95% of people think they're self-aware, but only 10 to 15% of people are actually aware, and I bet that's you. So I want you to take a minute right now to download this free guide, because you're going to want to have it alongside you as I walk you through it. You're not going to want to miss this. Many of us are conditioned by the medical mental health model to believe that our emotions are a medical problem and that they need a diagnosis, or that we have a sick brain, or that it needs to be treated. But the research is showing, and psychiatrists are finally starting to talk about this, that anxiety is not a chemical imbalance in the brain. It's connected to how we deal with life problems. And I want to say this. I get it. I have struggled with anxiety my whole life. So I know how uncomfortable it is. And I know it's exhausting. And so mastery over anxiety is a mindset shift that we're going to talk about today. Because mastery doesn't mean that you never have anxiety again. It means that you know exactly how to deal with it when it comes up. In the medical model, that belief system leads us to two places. One, where we're seeking quick fixes for the uncomfortable feelings, or two, that our feelings and our emotions are things to endure. And avoidance is often seen as strength. But neither of those are true. Your emotions are not a problem to be fixed, okay? They're information. And so we want to lean into them. And this guide is going to show you how to do that. The first three principles that we want to get in our thinking: one, you need to be patient with yourself. You did not get this anxious overnight. And so you can't expect yourself to be done with it like that. This is a process, not an event, and it takes time to change patterns. The second thing is courage, because we have to be brave when we are going inside of ourselves and looking at the patterns that got us to where we are, because it's not going to feel comfortable all the time. But we have to go through the discomfort to get to the relief. And the third thing is radical self-honesty. This is so important. You want to be honest with where you have been abandoning yourself unknowingly. And we're going to uncover that today as I walk you through this. This is a three-step process. The first part is called the clarity triangle. This is where we have to understand the chaos. Now, this part isn't always fun, because we want to go into the negative pattern. We want to understand the part that doesn't feel good, because you can't get out of a trap that you can't see, okay? So let me show you what that looks like very briefly. When I do it in my office with clients, it looks like this. So if you're doing it by yourself, it's not going to be this clean, perfect thing, okay? This is how I do it with my clients, right here. Okay, and I'm going to walk you through this. So this is the clarity triangle. And so what you want to do in this first box is you want to pick something that has been triggering you. Just as an example, in this first box, this is what happens. You're at work and your boss emails you and is asking you to take on a new project, but you're overwhelmed and you know it's going to be too much. And that's the trigger right here in this box. So you write that down. And then you want to take a look at the 3 points on the triangle. There are your thoughts about it, there are your emotions about it, and then there's your behaviors about it, okay? And there are some questions up here. The first one is, what is the situation? Well, we just wrote that down. Your boss has sent you an email, you're overwhelmed, you don't want to take on any more work, but you're triggered. The anxiety kicks in, right? That's in the emotions box. You feel anxious. Maybe you feel angry because you don't want to take on any more work. Maybe you're feeling some fear that it's just going to be way too much, right? So you write that down on this part of the triangle where it says emotions. And then you want to ask yourself, when I feel this way, what are my thoughts? What am I telling myself, right? And maybe you're like, well, I have to say yes, because if I don't say yes, I'm not going to be considered a team player. Or I can't say no. Or maybe you're thinking thoughts like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just take on more, right? And then when you think those thoughts, what do you feel, right? And this part right here between the thought and the emotion is the most important part of this journey, because your thoughts and your emotions are communicating with each other. And so when you tell yourself, I have to do this, or I'm not going to be seen as a team player, notice how it ramps up your anxiety. And when your anxiety gets ramped up, notice what you think about that. Maybe you think, God, what's wrong with me? Why can't I handle this? And maybe that thought leads to shame. And then you want to take a look. When you're here having all these emotions, you want to go over here to number 4. What are your behaviors? What do you do when you're feeling anxious and ashamed? How do you behave? Maybe you shut down. Maybe you freeze. Or maybe you double down and you try to be a better team player, right? And then when you do that, more anxiety happens. So in this, you'll start to notice a pattern. I'm triggered by an event. I'm having thoughts, negative thoughts about myself. I'm having feelings that are going all over the place, and I'm behaving in certain ways. Because all of these things are interacting with each other, and they're ramping up that anxiety. So you'll notice at the very bottom of this page, it talks about really taking time to feel into your body during this part, because this is where we get to know the pattern, not just in our mind, but in our body. So take a few minutes to be with that before you move on. Okay, now we're going to go to the second part of the Chaos to Clarity guide. In this part, you really want to look at your thoughts. You want to take one of the thoughts that feels like the theme, the one thought that's really causing a lot of the problem. For example, the overwhelm. You may, in this example of when your boss comes up and says, here's more work, right? Now you're feeling overwhelmed. So you want to take that thought as we step into this next part. And I call this next part the turnaround template. And basically, it's 3 sentences, because I like to keep things simple, okay? It's 3 sentences. And the first one says, even though, and the second one says, maybe, and the third one says, it's possible. And you want to take the overwhelm and work with that. And so just right now, feel into your body. Feel into a time in your life where you were really overwhelmed by something, right? We want to call that up. Maybe you feel it in your chest and there's thoughts running around. And then I want you to listen to this turnaround statement. Even though I feel completely overwhelmed and like I have no choice, maybe my boss actually knows how full my plate is. And it's possible that if I'm honest about my capacity, we can find a solution together. And just notice how that phrase lands in your body. Because it's those kinds of turnarounds that we need to start to make when our anxiety is ramped up. Because anxiety always takes us into black and white thinking. Like, I'm overwhelmed and I have no choice. You know, they're overpowering me and I can't do it. It's not fair, right? Or I'm broken, or what's wrong with me? We get very black and white. And so in the turnaround, you want to think about what I call reaching for a better feeling thought. Okay. Now, this is not in the guide, so you're going to want to really listen to this. Okay. A better feeling thought is not positive thinking, because positive thinking does not work. Have you ever noticed? You can't just go from feeling totally overwhelmed to not being overwhelmed. Like, it wouldn't work to say, I'm not overwhelmed by this, when you are. So you're not being honest. You need to be honest with the fact that you are overwhelmed, but maybe, and it's in that maybe that we start to shift the feeling. Maybe it's not as bad as I think. And it's possible my boss and I can work out a solution. And it's that tweaking of the thought that calms the anxiety. Just feel it in your own body right now. And that's why the thought-emotion connection is so important, okay? So in this template, I have it written out for you so you can go through, and there's a box down here at the bottom for you to play with this, right? Even though I'm overwhelmed, maybe we can come up with a solution, and it's possible I won't have to do all this work, right? And you just kind of go through that in yourself. And then to make sure that you really have a turnaround statement that feels right, you want to go through the triangle one more time. Okay. And I call this last triangle. This is your integration triangle. Okay. This is where you're taking triangle number 1, which has all of the chaos in it, and you're taking your turnaround statement and you're bringing it together in a fresh triangle, right? And now you're looking at how you're responding differently to this trigger, right? Same trigger, new thought. Same trigger, different emotion. Same trigger, different behavior. So let's just walk through it very briefly, right? Same trigger, the boss comes in, gives you more work, right? But instead, you're thinking, okay, even though I'm overwhelmed, maybe there's a solution to that. Maybe I can have a conversation with my boss and we can work it out. You still may have a little bit of anxiety, but you'll notice that the anxiety goes down. You may still feel a little bit of fear, but then you notice that once you take action, right, because the new behavior is, I'm going to go talk to my boss and see what I can do. Or the new behavior is, I'm going to wait, 24 hours and see how I feel tomorrow, right? Instead of getting caught in the old spin. It's really important to flush this one out, and there's some space down here for you to work on it a little bit more. And the very last page is just a time for you to do some reflection. And I really want to encourage you to not rush through this, okay? Really take the time to answer the prompts. It says here to write down exactly where you started, right? Where you landed at the end, what shifted for you, and really write, how does your nervous system feel at the end? Write down any questions that you have and pop those in the comments below, because I'll get back to you on those. Those are really important. So, and then at the end of this template, it says, great work. Remember, you can't get out of a trap you can't see. So if you made it through this, you're one step closer to mastering your anxiety. You just moved through something that most people avoid for years. So congratulations. You're in the 10 to 15%. And this is a skill. And like every skill, you get stronger every time you use it. If you haven't already downloaded it, download it now and take it with you and try this out on your own. You won't regret it. Next time anxiety shows up, you have a tool. If you want to go deeper with me in this work, I'm offering a free live stream session where I'm going to take people through this live with your real issues. So if you'd like to be part of that, please click the link below and get on the wait list so I can notify you when I'm going to do that. And of course, if you want more free gifts and tools, head on over to my freemium page. I got some other things in the works for you to help you learn to master not just your anxiety, but all the pesky emotions. So, see you in the next episode.